Hello and welcome to the Medfield TV Meet the Candidate Special. Elections are March 29th and it is so important that you get out and vote. In this election, there is one contested race on the ballot, although another race does have a write-in candidate running involved. You can watch our What's on the Ballot special for more details on that and the other members of your community running for election. In today's Meet the Candidate Special, we focus in on the important school committee race with three candidates up for election: incumbent Leo Brem, Lauren Liljegren, and Robert Worth. Today's episode focuses on candidate for the school committee, Robert Worth.
So I have over a decade of experience in education. I currently work as a school administrator, as an assistant principal in Wrentham, split between two schools there. I've worked there now for, this will be my third year there. One of the schools I work at is a preschool through third grade, and the other one is a fourth grade through sixth grade. Before that, I worked in a few different schools in nearby Westwood. And before that, I worked in a charter school in Dorchester. So I bring, over a decade of experience and knowledge in education to the position. And in my current role, especially during the pandemic, I've been, faced with some of the challenges and some of the opportunities to collaborate with colleagues and really do what's best for students at all times. Medfield faced some of the challenges that I don't currently face in my position. Having a full middle school model and a high school model factored into the K-12 education in Medfield, I definitely think that there were some added challenges. I know that there's been technology challenges throughout the pandemic as well. We haven't faced as many of those in Wrentham. With that said, we had the same kind of process in preparing for bringing students back this year for the hybrid model. And also for some students who chose remote learning. And that process really involved interpreting the DESE guidelines, the CDC guidance, and making that into a policy at the school. And that's one thing that we did that's very similar to the way that it was done in Medfield. We did that in Wrentham. One of the things that we've really been able to highlight in Wrentham, and I think has been really successful for us, is the way that we've collaborated to really make the best of this situation and always focus on students and doing what's best for students, supporting families as well. I think Medfield has done a good job of that throughout the process, from what I could gather. Not being in the schools, I'm not critical of anything in particular, although I do think that collaboration is key in the process, and that's really, if you look around the state of Massachusetts and you see districts that have been more successful in bringing more students back for in-person learning, thinking about kindergarten and first grade in particular, our youngest, most vulnerable students. I'm thinking about those districts that really had strong collaboration before the pandemic and then kind of kicked it up a notch when the pandemic rolled around, and they capitalized on that strong collaboration, and they were really able to work together to do what's best for students. We collaborate very strongly with our community in Wrentham. We have a small community, and we were really able to collaborate with our local Board of Health and our public health nurses, as well as the extended community beyond that, thinking about just the families that are in our town. And I think, again, towns that have managed to bring students back and serve students well throughout the pandemic have really been able to capitalize on their ability to collaborate and engage with the community, educate the community, make people feel safe as well. Safety and the feeling of safety has been a huge part of making the successful return to school effort. And I think that I'm really proud of what I've done in my current position, working with the other administrators in my district, working closely with the teachers union, working closely with families and students every day to make sure that everyone is safe and really feels safe and engaged in the process as well. In the past districts that I've been a part of, even though not in an administrative role or not in a school committee member role, I've really been engaged in school committee and kind of keeping track on what's going on. School committees are generally pretty small in Massachusetts districts, between 5 and 7 members. And Medfield, you have 5 members there. And I think what you're really looking for in a successful school committee is a diverse makeup of people from different backgrounds that really represent the community, represent the best interest of students and families. In my current role, I'm able to do that very well and think about how schools run, the budgetary concerns, the day-to-day operations, curriculum, and the way that we implement it. And by being in schools, working with students in classrooms, on the phone with families, engaging in the community every day in a different district, I'm really able to see kind of how that works and sometimes how it doesn't work. And I think I bring that knowledge to the role of a school committee member. I don't think it's a necessary prerequisite to being a successful school committee member, but I surely think it helps. And I think that every school committee really deserves someone who has experience in education, in schools, and really can call themselves an educational expert. I think especially, with the pandemic, we look at past inequities that have been in schools and achievement gaps, either through standardized testing or just through some of the assessments that we become aware of in schools. Those achievement gaps have now widened because of the pandemic. One of the things that we'll be faced with, one of the challenges that we'll be faced with as we return to school is really trying to narrow and close those achievement gaps, both the ones that existed before the pandemic and the ones that have been exacerbated by the pandemic. And I think that, being an administrator, being someone who's in schools every day, it really makes me aware of where those achievement gaps are, where those inequities fall, and how we can work together as a community, both in the school and within the larger community, to try to close some of those achievement gaps. I've lived here for about 1.5 years now. I grew up in Westwood, which was, right nearby. I went to school there. I also worked there, as a young teacher. So I'm very familiar with the Medfield community. I also have family members who are longtime residents. So, my whole life I've been really familiar with the community, even though I haven't lived here for my entire life. And with that in mind, I'm kind of thinking about the values of the community and how much educational value is a part of the community values, and really thinking about how excellent the schools are and also what room there is for improvement. My wife and I chose Medfield as a town because of those community values. We live right off of Main Street. We love having access to downtown, the restaurants. We love how engaged all of our neighbors are in the community, and there seems to be a lot of ways for people to engage throughout the community, even amongst the pandemic. Making it difficult for people to gather. The community has done a great job engaging everyone's voice and making sure that everyone's heard. Once the pandemic is over, I do think that there will still be lasting effects, for the foreseeable future. Like I said, some of those, inequities that existed are now larger. Some of those achievement gaps are now larger. We're really going to have to think about how, the pandemic and the return to school has affected the social emotional health of our students. Beyond the pandemic, beyond that return to school and those effects, those negative effects of the pandemic that will kind of play its way into school for the next couple of years. I do think that those things are still very important. The social emotional health of our students, especially in a high achieving school district like Medfield, is always a top priority for me. Inequities in school, whether they're presented openly or not, I think have always been a top priority for me as an administrator in a school, working with teachers and students and families, and also as a school committee member, thinking about how we can work to identify any kind of inequities and really achieve social justice in our schools, making sure that we're serving everybody well and equitably. I really do believe that every school committee deserves someone who has both experience and expertise in schools, whether it be working with students directly or working in a central office position. I think that anyone who has had any experience working in schools can really bring a lot of value to a school committee. I feel like being someone who's new in the Medfield community, but someone who plans to stay in the Medfield community and be engaged and eventually have students who are in the schools, it makes me have a vested interest in the community, and I want to make sure that the schools reflects the values of everyone in the community, and that we continue to move forward and build upon the excellence that already exists. As we return from the pandemic, I do think that my experience working in schools every day and really being on the ground and encountering those unexpected situations will help me as a school committee member in thinking about what that next 2-3 years looks like in that first term as school committee if I'm elected. Beyond that, I think that I bring a lot of value to the school community and the school committee, thinking about how to work with teachers and teachers unions. I have experience as a teacher. I have experience being part of a teachers union. I also have experience negotiating with teachers unions and really thinking about what's best for students and working with teachers to achieve that. That's some of the value that I bring to the school community. I think about the new Dale Street project and the opinions that people have about that and how that will be kind of evolving as we look at it over the next few years as we go into the building process and the final decision-making process. I have experience working in 2 schools that are on the same campus, very similar to the proposed project and the way that the schools will be divided, but also on the same campus and providing students access to different opportunities and community engagement through that one campus model. And I have that experience right now. I work between 2 buildings every day. They're 150 feet apart, and my position really exists because of the fact that we have one campus. So I bring that experience as we think about how to staff those buildings, how students will transition from one school to the next, and kind of how that will look different from how it's looked in the past with the schools possibly being so close to one another. I bring some of that experience as well.
Thank you for watching our Meet the Candidates special. We will be following up on each of these candidates in another episode where they'll each be given a chance to respond to each other, and we'll have you, the viewer, write in questions on our Facebook page. You can write in a question on the Meet the Candidates post on the Medfield TV Facebook page, or liking the question you think should be asked. The top 3 liked questions will be asked to all 3 candidates. So questions should be written for all 3 candidates. Questions for an individual candidate will be removed from the post. The deadline for submissions and voting will be on March 8th. We hope you enjoyed today's episode and will submit a question or like a question you think will best serve our community. And I hope you join us on the follow-up episode of Meet the Candidates. Go out and vote on March 29th. Thank you for watching.